Wow. Well, I am very privileged today to be joined by Michael Tobin, OBE, and he's been a supporter of my podcast shows. Well, since I actually started years ago, probably 6, maybe even 7 years ago now, and
Far too long, Nat.
it's
Far too long.
far too long. but so much has changed. I mean, since we first did an interview, so much has changed. When it comes to like the user cases of, they were talking about chatbots, they were talking about AI, and they were talking about all of these things, and everything has just, I don't know, it's just sort of caught up on me in the past few months. And I don't know. I mean, I know you're from the data center kind of space, right? Like that's your core, but there's just so much going on, Mike. I mean, it's quite an exciting time, isn't it, at the moment, but also a little nerve-wracking for people.
Yeah, I think people sort of have this impression that the AI is going to take over the world, but I don't think it's going to replace people. But I think people using AI will replace people that are not using AI, right? So I think that's the kind of definition, rather than it just saying, oh, there won't be a person there anymore, right? So I think when you look at the value, the values, the use cases of AI, there's so many, and they come down to simply replicating what humans do in terms of our thought processes and the way we learn, but in a super fast way. So we learn by, kids say, kids see a stovetop, right? And they go to touch it, and their mum says, don't touch that, it's hot. Well, they still touch it because they don't know what hot means, right? And then they go, ouch, I now know what hot means. Okay. And that's what AI is doing 1,000 times a second, right? It's learning what hot means. And so over time, it can form opinions and make decisions based on that learning, just as we do as human beings. So if you imagine, a scientist looking to research something, and imagine his sort of test tube there, and putting a drop of something, then testing it, and it's not enough, another drop, testing it, it could go through this 100 times. Well, that scenario can be done in milliseconds with AI using as well quantum computing, right? So quantum computing is another sort of zone of value that the tech world is getting into at the moment. And you and I don't have access to quantum computing yet because it's so damn expensive, but there are companies starting now, and I'm sure the likes of Amazon with AWS will do it eventually soon as well, which are providing quantum computing power as a service. So you'll be able to swipe your credit card, and instead of doing a calculation over a 3-month process on your laptop, you can, or even a 2-week process on AWS, you'll be able to do it in 5 minutes on quantum. So it'll be expensive, but it won't be, you won't need to buy a supercomputer to do it, sort of thing. It'll be as a service. So I think there's lots of things that are linked with AI, the ability to truly number crunch in big ways, to develop new solutions, and to build things that build theories as well. And, sort of quantum physics that we just haven't been able to do with the tech up until now.
Wow. So what you're basically saying is that the current AI that people are using to kind of crunch numbers, there will be even more modeling that's kind of done, and then the accuracy will be improved, but also the speed will be improved by the use of the quantum plugging that in, right?
Yeah, exactly. And if you think about, part of the learning of AI is how to build AI better. So you don't just get a linear improvement, which, mankind has done this, but it's taken sort of many generations. So you start with kind of, a human drawn plow, and then an ox drawn plow, and then someone invents the engine, and then you get a tractor, and and so, but this takes generations, right? But that kind of thing can be now done by AI in milliseconds, because each sort of generation of AI is redeveloping the next generation of AI infinitely faster and better than we could have done. And then the next one does the same thing. So the acceleration is kind of very, very strong when it comes to what we think of, the capabilities of AI in 5 years' time, even, or even 3 years' time.
Right. Right. It's slightly worrying. I was reading something the other day about basically the African American population are actually going to be hit very, very hard by the loss in jobs, purely because of the types of jobs that they're actually in, and that's sort of quite worrying that we haven't really done huge amounts of kind of planning, like how are we going to help these people to sort of move from not being able to use AI to actually and all these new tools to kind of being, well, they're going to be a bit lost, aren't they, in the sort of short term? It's a bit of a worry, really.
Well, I don't know those stats, so I can't comment on that. But I think there are certain roles that I think will evolve quicker. I mean, if you think about fairly, people have gone to university for years and to become lawyers, for example, right? And one of the big areas that AI is going to change is the legal sector, because generally, in most developed countries, the rule of law is kind of based on precedents, right? So if you're coming to court and your main argument is, well, the last time something like this happened, this was the outcome, right? And a lawyer might have to work for years to understand the possibility of those things and then know which books to go to and which research to do. Well, imagine for every single case, in a millisecond, AI says, well, I'll give you the last 15 versions of that, right? And I'll even give you a recommendation based on, if you're saying there's 6 of those and 5 of those, or the latest one did that. So I'll give you all the options you like. So you don't even need to think about having to work for the last 5 years in university to work this one out. You just take your choice of those 3 or 4 answers that it gives you in milliseconds. Okay. So again, it doesn't replace the lawyer, but it replaces the depth of kind of experience and knowledge that he or she will be required to have, because they can never have as much as AI. So I'm not sure that there's any particular sort of demographic that is not going to be impacted by AI going forward. I think it's going to impact all of our lives, both in terms of job element of it, how we're going to earn our livings, but I think also it's going to affect us. So, for example, when we look at the personalized sort of advertising that we all know and love or hate from places like Amazon, where you buy a pair of trainers on Amazon and then you get a load of adverts for trainers and things. Well, I always wonder why they send me adverts for trainers when they know I've just bought a pair of trainers. That's the last thing I want. But if then they can say, well, actually, what size of trainer was it? And then typically I imagine you're this size, therefore I'm gonna push you running shorts, and I'm gonna push you blister packs, and I'm gonna push you pots of Vaseline or whatever it is, right, that goes with a running trainers and sneakers. So I think there's lots more richness that can be given to us as customers. And a lot of people don't like that. A lot of people don't like the push type of ads. But if they're going to help you if you're searching for something and the search just comes back a whole lot richer, then that should be a value, right? And speaking of search, by the way, and sort of my day job, data centers and things. Well, speaking to Google in the US a couple of months ago, and they were saying their AI engine Bard, which is, I think it's just been renamed Gemini, that will go underneath Google search. So they're obviously worried about losing the kind of landing page position to Microsoft with ChatGPT. So they're saying, okay, well, I'm not going to make Gemini a separate product. I'm just going to load it in underneath Google search, so that when you search, you'll just have a much richer response, and you'll be able to put in a much richer question as well, right? So you don't have to put in keywords. You can actually ask a genuine question and a genuine answer will come back. But the thing about that is that the power consumed for every single search is 18 times what it was before. 18 times, right? Wow. And if you think about how many data centers, how many megawatts are being built around the world every year now, and it's just increasing. And that's historically only been to deal with the world's migration to cloud provision. Right? So instead of having your photos only on your phone, they're all up in the cloud as well. And your key documents, they're all up in the cloud. You're connecting through the network, and the network going up via the cloud. You know, your user instances is up there. But that's only been to drive that. Now you've got AI, which is going to consume 17 times more power. Right. So, you know, there's hundreds of thousands of data centers around the world now. So you imagine all of those times 17 just to stand still. And I think, you know, that's really repercussions to, you know, sustainability as well. But, you know, in all these cases, innovation is happening, right? So, you know, we're not just in the industry there. We're not just sitting there and just saying, okay, we're just going to draw more power off the grid. I mean, you know, people are building their own dedicated power stations for data centers now. So 100 megawatts of gas-fired power station to power a dedicated data center is not uncommon these days around the world. But, you know, using solar, yeah, I was reading an article the other day where there's massive solar farms in Morocco, and we've got now submarine cables bringing it back to the UK. So even though we don't have much sun in the UK, you know, we've got plenty of sun in North Africa, and that then can be transmitted under subsea cables to the UK. So, wow. You know, there's lots of different things that are happening to mitigate this, but nevertheless, it's causing various sort of periphery industries to have to rethink the way they look to the future.
Wow, that's a really interesting way of looking at it. So it would all depend. Would it also be affected by like the distance that it has to travel? So like if a data center is like closer to you, it's going to use less electricity than if it was, you know, maybe 200, 300 miles away or whatever.
Well, you get losses when you transmit electricity, right? So you have to have booster environments on the way. But the reason, you know, you could say, well, why don't you just put your data center in Morocco? Well, because the data centers are doing things that are latency sensitive as well, right? So if you think about the other big thing that we've been talking about since you and I have been doing these podcasts, but still hasn't really developed into mainstream yet, is Internet of Things. And the Internet of Things is simply a term used to define devices or even sensors that are connected to the internet, right? So if you think about right now, we've got our computers and our phones and things like that, right? But there are more devices connected to the internet now than there are human beings on the planet, right? And the more information they gather, and very often they're simply one-way sensors. They're not bi-directional like a computer. They're one-way sensors. And so the more of this data coming in, the more you've got to do with it, and the more sensitive it becomes as to how quickly you can receive it and deal with it. So I'll give you an example, right? So, you know, we're not quite there on driverless cars yet, but we should be. And the biggest reason we're not there yet is because human beings can't evolve their thought process to a level that they become comfortable that they're being driven around by computers, right? And in particular, if the computer has an accident, then it's terrible. It's big news. Whereas we have accidents 100 times a day and no one kind of makes a big deal of it. But if you have two driverless cars going, you know, in opposite directions, and they're coming up and they're about to have an accident, you don't want them communicating via Seattle. You want them communicating via the street corner, right? So the super low latency comes from the proximity that the signal has to transmit to and from. So if you have, let's say, you know, you're sitting in the back of your car, I'm sitting back of mine, reading the newspaper, going to work, and then suddenly your car communicates with mine and says, oh, I've just seen this old man has just slipped on the side of the road and he's fallen in front of my car. And if I don't react, I'm going to run him over. So I'm going to swerve. But if I swerve towards you, can you swerve the other way so that you avoid me? Right. And this all happens in a millisecond, right? This won't happen with humans because we just don't react in time. But then my car says, yeah, okay, I can do that. But have you noticed on my side of the street, there's a woman pushing a pram. It's a double buggy. And and she's like, I don't know, probably 25 years old. And the two kids are 1 and 3 or something. And so the average combined age there to go, if I hit them and kill them, is about 200 years. Whereas that guy I see from facial recognition is 82. So he's probably got about 10 years left. So I suggest you just kill him, because that's the right solution for the time, right? And this conversation will go on, right? And then it'll all go, because then it'll be a driverless car kills a human, intentionally kills a human, right? And then you go, how does that sit with our kind of morals and psyche and everything else? And yet, we'd kill him without even having that debate, right? And that's okay, because that's called an accident. But when it's intentional, intention is to do the right thing, which is to avoid the loss of significant life. And of course, then you overlay that and you say, well, actually, I didn't see his face, but I kind of know from his shape, he's roughly about that age. But if I'd have seen his face, I'd have realized that this guy is Professor blah, blah, and he was just about to find the cure of cancer that has saved millions of lives worldwide. And actually, we should have just killed the woman with their babies.
Yeah. It's a brutal calculation to oversee, isn't it? At the end of the day,
the thing is, right? So we will chat. We're almost sort of saying we'll leave that to God. Well, I don't believe in God, but I'd rather have tons of information making an informed judgment with educated AI than having two drivers that have significantly worse reaction times and just doing what ends up being done. But can we get it through? Very difficult. It's very difficult to sort of see how legislation for that kind of scenario will get passed.
Yeah, that's going to take quite a while. But then, hey, maybe the AI lawyers are going to crunch. I mean, look, you put all these pieces together, don't you? And then you have something that is vaguely interesting, in terms of the way that it calculates this. It becomes, it's almost like the machine would give you recommendations as to the best way to kind of handle it based upon the law of loads of cases of deaths on the road. I mean, it's a big. I mean, we talked about this before, didn't we? I can see you've been thinking about it.
And when you look at this Internet of Things, right? So if you think about this kind of quick reaction, and it doesn't have to be intelligence like two cars talking to each other. I mean, if you're in a sheet metal factory and you're printing out an image, a shape of, the side of a washing machine or something, I don't know, and this thing's got, or something more precise, and this machine, the robotics is just punching out this shape all the time, run from a program. You probably have to stop it every 50 pieces to make sure that the tolerance is still good, because each time you do that, it blunts the edge of the tool, right? So the tolerance starts to wear. So you're stopping it 20 or 30 times. That means, you're delaying production, because each time you have to stop it, you're losing time and everything else. Whereas if you had AI and you had a sensor that was automatically monitoring the bluntness of the tool, you would only need to stop it once when you knew exactly that the tolerance was about to be breached. Then change the tool, and then you're back in the game. So all the time, that data, imagine data is like, you only want to see the most immediate information. You don't need all that. You only want to see that. So your view of data is very narrow like that as it's whizzing past you. And as soon as you see something that says, right, change the tool, then that's when you act. Now, what happens is all that data still exists, and it gets dumped to in a big storage repository. And that's where the guy that's deciding how much tolerance he can make gets his analysis from, because he does research and big data analysis on all that. So you've got two types of data then. You've got the immediacy of the Internet of Things, and then you've got the analytical of huge amounts of data being referred to build better and more informed decisions. And that's what AI does. It brings those two things together.
It's a fascinating world we're in. I mean, a friend of mine runs the Chief Digital Officers Summit, and he's now launched the Chief AI Officers Summit. So, with Chief AI Officers coming in, it's like, look, you guys have to use this, right? But it's fascinating as to the sort of user cases, like how you can use, for example, like have a camera on the bin lorry that basically tracks the holes in the roads, right? There are so many of these kind of use cases that I'm absolutely fascinated by it. And it's actually very simple calculation, isn't it? It's the tolerance thing, right? Like it takes a video and then it works out the hole in the road and then says, oh, well, you know, that's more than the tolerance. Okay, we're going to report this to the people who are going to fill the holes, right? Like it's quite exciting. I'm quite excited about it, to be honest.
You know, if we can let go of our fear, right? And you know, probably 20 odd years ago, I lived in Denmark for a few years. And the first thing you do there is you get your ID card, right? And already that's a big difference to the UK, because apparently we have a phobia about ID cards. Can't understand why. We have passports, but but anyway, so you get an ID card. And then the second thing you do is open a bank account, right? So you go in the bank and then they say, well, would you like, and remember, this is over 20 years ago. They said, would you like an additional piece of security on your credit card? And I'll issue it now, and it can have your face on your credit card as an additional piece of security. And I went, yeah, but I don't want to go and get my photo, and I haven't got one with me. So oh, no, give me your ID card, your government ID card, puts it in the machine, downloads my picture from the government records, and puts it on the thing, right? So the government and the bank is talking together directly, right? Now, at the end of the year, my tax return comes pre-filled, right? Now, as long as I'm not trying to avoid tax, why would I be worried, right, that comes pre-filled and all I have to do is sign it and send it back? Now, people get very upset about that. They say, I don't want the government seeing into my bank account. Well, if you're not doing anything wrong, why not? It's supposed to be simplification. It's supposed to be an ease of use, right? And so that so much technology is out there to make, and it's the same as pushing you the right advertising, right? Pushing you, people are going to push you advertising whether you like it or not. So, you know, if you register, you know, sometimes you want a service and it's free, but you have to register, right? And they say, oh, all you have to do is put in your date of birth and blah, 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 like this. And everyone puts in like born yesterday. What's your name? Mickey Mouse, you know. And then they wonder that they get this rubbish put to them like nappies and toys because they you know, because they've given the wrong information to people in the first place. So if you want technology to work for you, you've got to be fearless of it, right? And you've got to say, yes, I'll put my information in. Now, there's obviously people also worried not only about the kind of the push of the advertising, but they're also worried about people stealing that. So that system being hacked, right? And then that information being used for skullduggery. Now, we're never going to, you know, it's like speed cameras. Every time you get a speed camera, you get someone that comes up with a speed camera detector, and then you get a better speed camera system, you get a better detector system, and so on and so forth. But you're never going to get ahead of bad people, right? So bad actors are going to always be finding ways to do bad things. But that's not exclusive to technology, right? That's in all walks of life.
True.
Right? You know, if you have a loaded gun, right, and you put it on this table, in 100 years, you'll come back and this loaded gun will have harmed no one. But if someone picks it up and does something with it, then it is a dangerous weapon. So the point being, right, you almost have to learn to live with the risk, but mitigate it as much as you can.
Yeah.
Right? Just as you know, if you walk down this, you know, in the UK now, there's a lot of people that suffer from getting their phone swiped by people riding up behind them on the pavement, taking it out of the phone. It's a big thing at the moment, right? So generally people don't like to use their phone in the street. So because of that same thing, as you're staring at your phone like that, you're not aware of your environment. Now, there is my personal opinion is, you know, we shouldn't chastise people for not using the phone, you know, or for hiding the phone, because they're the victim after all. However, if a bit of common sense would suggest, you know, don't use it as much as you know, all the time wandering around with it, kind of waving around, because someone's gonna steal it. So there is a kind of a common sense approach to it, even if you know you know the risk is there. If a little bit of common sense, and you can mitigate a lot of the risks. So I think, you know, treating technology with a little bit more business as usual approach will get more value out of technology than trying to kind of hide yourself from it.
Yeah, and also, I mean, like, having regulations that are actually in line with the current technology. I mean, like I drove from here from Croatia with my friend to pick up a car. Drove to Germany, right? And it's like on the way, I went through Slovenia, I went through Austria, and there are cameras everywhere. If you want to speed between here and Germany, you got a big chance of getting huge tickets, right? Like ridiculous tickets. But then you get to Germany, and then it's like, oh, here's the autobahn. You can go as fast as you want,
No
right?
speed limit.
Yeah, and so it's like, but it's like, but then there are also masses of speed cameras on the other side, on the outside of the autobahn. You're going to get tickets, right? And actually, they've worked out that this is quite safe to have a very fast piece of road, and then loads of different mobile cameras that they just put on the leave by the side of the road, and it's just the whole system, in my opinion, needs a good look at, really, in terms of how it works with all this. And they're doing it, aren't they? The EU has sort of brought in lots of things, but I don't know quite where that sits with UK and America and how all these kind of things are gonna.
London in particular, but the UK has more facial recognition cameras per capita, I think, than anywhere on the planet, right? And so anywhere in London, anywhere within the sort of greater London area, you can be tracked by facial recognition everywhere. And then if you add into that this kind of in-store systems, and there's a couple of blind spots in the subway, in the underground area,
right?
But because they can pick you up as soon as you come back out again because of facial recognition. That's why so many people, that intent on doing no good, are wearing all these face masks.
Right.
Because facial recognition can find anyone anywhere right now. And I don't feel bad about that, because I'm not intending to do any bad things, right? So I want people to be monitored and to be caught before they do something else. So, this isn't a kind of a invasion of privacy discussion. It's a security discussion. So, I think there's, again, embracing the technology and not being afraid of this sort of loss of privacy or our rights or whatever. It's just nonsense. Technology is being used for good in that context.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think if you've got something to hide, then you would sort of worry about it. I mean, we've got an identity card here, right? And that is everything is plugged in for your bank account. So if you want to register a car, you go and you go to your banking app, you take a code from there, and then you log in, you register the car. You actually log in using the code, which is a bizarre feeling, like having a government thing, and then but you get a code from your bank. It's quite weird. Like the whole concept is.
Well, the interesting thing, right? So at the moment, that's a kind of, for me, that's a middle solution, because you get most of the primary currencies now. They're talking about moving to sort of a digital currency version of their own. So dollar, pound, euro, yen. They're all saying, well, step one was, as has been going for years, where the bank and the government are linked. But when you're transacting, and let's say with a credit card, it's not going through your bank, if it's a third-party credit card like a MasterCard or so instead of having all these different banks that are acting as clearinghouses, if you had a digital currency that was called the pound or the dollar or whatever, and all your transactions went directly through a central point, not through the local banks, then they would immediately be able to detect. They'll say, oh, last year you declared you earned 100,000 and you spent 150. So where's the disconnect? Right. And that's where they're pushing to, is to be able to understand everything that you do for tax purposes, to eliminate tax evasion. Now, people are saying, well, I don't like the idea that the government knows exactly what I'm buying and how I'm buying it and what I'm earning and where I'm earning. But the only reason you wouldn't like that is if you're trying to do something to avoid it, right?
Absolutely.
And if you think that, I happen to think that paying tax is a privilege, because you've had to earn money, you've earned money to need to pay it, right? And I'm not in favor of crazy tax rates, but if it is there and it's the rule, then it's the rule. So, you know, I think having technology enforce that in whatever way is fine by me.
Yeah, I mean, you just need to earn more money. It's as simple as that. If you're worried about that, you just have to earn more money, right? Like it, and pay more tax.
Or spend
What's
less.
that?
Or
Yeah,
spend
yeah,
less.
or both, right? And it's but I'm really excited about the future, Mike. And I always love speaking with you. I don't know if you've got time, we could sort of talk a little bit about smart home automation, and maybe you can tell me about that company that you're invested in, which is with all of the sensors in the hands and this sort of stuff. That I think that's quite interesting, like the gloves and stuff.
Yeah. So I mean, well, actually, there's no gloves in it. That's it's the sensation business called Ultraleap, and a sensation of touch in midair. So this brilliant guy out of Bristol University came up with his dissertation with a solution that uses transducers, which effectively is a transducer is simply a speaker and a microphone in the same little unit. And in our cars, in the bumper, you've got a bunch of these transducers, and they've not really evolved in technology terms for decades, right? But when you reverse, they go beep, 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 and all it's doing is sending out an ultrasonic signal that you can't hear, and even dogs can't hear, and it bounces back. So it's sending it and receiving it and working out the distance from the wall. And so as the signal is sent out, it's like a ripple when you drop a pebble in a lake, the ripple goes out. And if you have two that you drop simultaneously, the ripples hit each other and there's kind of disturbance.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So this kid basically worked out that if you put sort of 300 of these on an array, right, and the special source is the algorithm to say that every one of these signals has to be sent at slightly different times, because if your hand is here, the distance there and the distance there would be different, right? So slightly different times for all of those ripples, if you like, to hit exactly at the same point where your finger is, then you'll feel that on your finger. And if you do that 100 times a second, you feel that on your finger. So now you can press buttons that aren't there and feel them in midair.
Yeah. So apart from the buttons, like in the cars and sort of stuff like that, what other user cases have you guys got for that? Because I'm really interested in all of that, actually.
So the funny thing is that during COVID, it was a big bump in our use cases, because I don't know if you remember in the fast food shops, like McDonald's or stuff, they have these screens at the front now where you order and then you go and pick up, right, to stop the long queues. So during COVID, every time you press the screen, someone had to come and disinfect it before the next person came along, right? So this, you don't touch the screen, but you touch here and you feel here, but you're 6-7 inches away, right? And you can follow the little thing on the screen, but you can feel when you've actually pressed. So you're getting tactile feedback to say I'm ordering things, right? But you're not actually touching the screen. So there's, like, again, there's more than enough technology to do anything we can imagine, quite frankly, right now.
Right.
Our biggest challenge is our imagination to do stuff using the technology that exists. Right. So we have one of the challenges of that is, where do you put the button? Actually, you don't want to have to find a button in midair because you can't see it. So the button has to come to you. Right. So wherever you are, you have to immediately pick up the button. So then you've got to have unbelievable hand tracking. So the sensors have got to monitor your hand. And if you're then when you've got the new Apple goggles and things, right, the new VR headsets, they've all got our hand tracking in them as well. So when you put one hand over the other, it remembers that the one that can't actually see is still there, so it can still give you both hands to play with, if you like, in your experiment. And so there's a lot of technology now that is. It's funny because we think about our fingerprints as something that helps us not slide off something when you try and pick it up, right? Which is kind of partly it's a little bit of sort of like tire tread, gives you a bit of grip. But actually, the other thing about it is for the sensation when you run your finger across a surface, you can identify what that surface is, right? And you can say, oh, that's glass, or that's metal, or that's wood, or that's paper, because of the vibrations that it creates on the ridges of your fingerprint. And
Right.
so Ultraleap can create those sensations in midair. So you can go, you close your eyes, go, oh, that's wood, that's paper, that's plastic, simply because it can create those vibrations for your finger. So,
Wow.
there's all sorts of, and then plenty of things that are going on at the moment in automation, in VR, that this technology is using. But again, we're only at the forefront of all this, right?
Yeah.
Who's to say that we don't have a complete kind of virtual life in the future, that we just lay there on some sort of sustenance bed that just plugged in and feeds us, and in our minds we're living our best life, right? Have an amazing life. And is that good or bad? Because when we talk about travel and we talk about experience, having fun, eating good food, that's only kind of sensations and memories, and it's stimulus for our brains at the end of the day. Well, if you could truly recreate all of that inside you, why do you? Because then you don't have to have to worry about getting on a plane for 14 hours to go to the beach in Mauritius or something, right? So you're there. So all the rubbish is gone if you can truly recreate this perfect sensation in your brain. And if you can recreate I mean, we had these recently they put the first chips in brains of people that have had paralysis from the neck down, right? And they're giving them exoskeletons, right, connected to the chip in their brain, and they're now able to start walking again, because the brain was telling the muscle what to do, but the signal wasn't getting there, because let's say the spine was broken or something. So now with an exoskeleton, it's being controlled by the brain, just as their limbs and their muscles were before, right? So we're doing sort of the outward bound sensation, right? And we're picking up people's sensations, brain signals, and interpreting them, right? But what we haven't quite got yet is the ability to reproduce those signals back into the brain to replace reality. So instead of looking at a beach or a picture of a beach, we effectively send the signal, you're looking at a beach, and the person can have their eyes closed and go, oh, I am actually looking at a beach. So, we're halfway there. Well, we're not even halfway there, but we're understanding the kind of receiving of the signals, and at some point we'll get that back and put it back into the brain as well.
It's a bizarre future that we have when you put all the pieces, the tactile senses together, like smell, touch, sight, and when you get them to be that amazing, I get it, right? But it's just like, it's just bizarre, isn't it? The whole thought of it is actually quite mind blowing. And like you say, it is only limited by our imagination. Like everything is limited by imagination in terms of where we take all this tech, because it's all been invented, right? We just need to put all the pieces together and speed it up.
And if you think about, again, how we started the conversation with AI, right? I mean, the AI is going to invent tech quicker than we've ever invented tech, right? So our ability to invent solutions, and our ability, more importantly, to accept the solutions, right, and legislate for them, is going to get ever further away than to the ability to develop technology in its own right, which is, this is the thing about AI. It's going to give us even more challenges to think about and consider, because it's going to invent stuff that we can't even imagine how to use. But it could.
I'm going to go away and digest this.
If we could convert the AI development of tech into a new sort of AI use case development, right, then that would be super interesting. That would be super
Well, I
interesting.
think it will. I think we will. You know, everything you can imagine right now. Like, we'll talk about this on our next podcast. We'll talk about this, and we'll see kind of what I've learned, and we'll have another really interesting conversation. But I can't thank you enough for your time, as always. Absolutely brilliant. And if you want to go and check out some of our other talks, we've done, I don't know, probably 6 or 7 now, maybe even more. And it's always an absolute pleasure. In fact, we might have done 10. I don't know how many we've done. A lot anyway. We've certainly done a lot. Oh yeah, because we did the positive personal power thing as well with Stanley Tucci and all of these amazing friends of yours, and the rugby guys and the cricket guys, and so we've probably done like maybe 30, I think now. I would say, if you include all of those.
Quite possible.
Yeah. Well, thank you, and I'll yeah, here we are. You know, so we must enjoy it, right? Or we wouldn't do it.
Run out of things to say. Haven't run out of things to say.
Thanks.